week is one of the most important weeks in Beatomic history. Okay, pause. So much happened last week. Things were moving so fast that I need to tell this story from the present space and time because it was only recently that I was punched in the gut with how impactful what happened last week was. But let me start at the beginning. We left Cleveland, Ohio on Thursday afternoon after Clint and I finished a 4-hour presentation to SIAA on all things SEO, review generation, Facebook ads, video marketing, and...
That is the challenge in our industry today. And that's part of what Seth, Sid, and I do. That's what we're focusing on in the Beatomic world. You have analytics from your AMS system and your rater and your carriers, but none of them communicate. And so you can't get a single full picture of the lifetime of your client, what happens, how they're engaging with you, how you're engaging with them, why you're winning, why you're losing, and where those opportunities exist. And that is the frustration of our industry, to your point of, if I've got to switch a management system, I've got to pay to get my data out. It comes on this clunky flash drive in files that I can't necessarily open, and then I gotta hope I don't have an E&O claim because they don't really all communicate with each other. And that's where our industry is broken today, and the technology exists to fix it.
There's a whole nother video on the epicness that is Clinton Houck talking all things digital marketing, coming very soon.
The slides are so good.
So we hopped in the Beast.
All right, let's go.
And made the 3-hour drive from Cleveland to Columbus, where we were about to give one of the most important presentations in Beatomic history. Up until now, if you've followed the journey, then you know we've been talking about how rough the tech environment is for agents to build that agent-consumer relationship. See, to really make that agent-consumer partnership more meaningful digitally, we need a more meaningful, closer relationship with our industry partners, the ones who are actually creating the product that we're selling. There's still a lot that agents don't know about carriers, and carriers don't know about agents in 2020. And that's part of Neon's mission, to help solve for that. Now there's 16 agents who see it, and they're willing to put the most important financial and personal investment, their business, on the line to see it all the way through. But we needed carriers to hear us too. This is kind of a scary, exciting moment for Beatomic. Can we do it? Are we good enough? Will the right people from enough carriers show up and commit to taking action? Will competitors who barely ever talk to each other, will they sit in one room together and collaborate?
I came from the mud, there's dirt on my hands, strong like a tree, there's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law, hope they won't shoot me down soon. They sing on a sleepless night, try to catch me howling at the moon.
Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. I wanted to start off by asking you to be criminals for a moment. This industry needs a couple of felonies, in my opinion. There's probably a cat running across the... And what I would tell you is we have had to break a lot of rules at Zinc to get here. Truthfully, as many of you found out, we've had to break a lot of rules with your own guidelines to get here, because when we asked you for permission, or if we asked you for permission, you always said no. Not because you're not awesome people, but because the rules are set up in such a way where innovation from an agent side represents danger or disparity or lack of forethought. And as someone who's charged with the responsibility of the technical asset of billion-dollar companies, that's a scary thought. And so we've had to kind of go behind the scenes and create a series of probably felonies within your companies to get here today. And I'm going to ask you to do the same. And what I would tell you is a little bit of criminal intent from all of you is what's needed for us to get through and win this. And so I want you to think about the fact that we will be asking you to break some rules at your carriers, not because we're hoping for bad things, but because it's time. And we can no longer hide behind things and still make change happen. And so you need me, you need this organization to be a criminal organization for a little bit of time. And I would say that that's always been okay. Sedition. Conduct inciting people to overthrow. I don't think anybody wants sedition at any of their companies. I mean, it would be a bad thing if people were conspiring from table to table to bring the demise of your organizations. I don't think anybody wants that. On March 10th of 1922, we did. We wanted sedition in the worst possible way. On March 10th of 1922, Mohandas Gandhi was arrested and charged for sedition for leading protests against colonial rule. And what was he asking for? What was the revolution about? It was like, hey, fair taxes, self-rule, don't discriminate against us. And so he was charged and arrested and served time for sedition. And so I would suggest that for the benefit of all mankind, we need a little sedition once in a while. We need to break a law in order to be successful. Civil disobedience, refusal of a citizen to obey laws. And I don't think anybody wants civil disobedience within their carriers. If people are ruining the laws within our carriers or within our agencies, it causes all sorts of chaos. But some of these rules dare to be questioned. On December 1st of 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested and charged with civil disobedience. And for the craziest crime, when I went and did the research, it wasn't that she refused to give up her seat in the section reserved only for white people. She was actually sitting in the section reserved for colored people, obeying the rules by all standards. And a gentleman who had a chance to be known in history as a revolutionary white American, James Park, went to Rosa Parks and said, "You need to give up your seat for a white passenger." And she said, "I'm sitting in the colored section. I have nowhere else to sit." And in that moment, James Park could have been the story. It could have been the story instead of Rosa Parks. It could have been James, because in the moment, he could have done the right thing. But he didn't want to be arrested for civil disobedience. She did, and I think we would all agree that we're thankful for that. Rioting, public disorder, and protesting against others. Does anybody want rioting at their carriers today? I don't think we do. That would cause all sorts of chaos. And in general, with a few exceptions, I don't support rioting anymore. But on June 28th, 1969, a group of people would take it no more. And it's now become famously known as the Stonewall Uprising. And here, gay people had nowhere to meet in public. And so the mafia in New York City decided to build these clubs, these bottle clubs, where gay people could meet, right? And so on one fateful night in 1969, the mafia didn't pay the bribes to the police. And so the police came in, arrest people, and in that night, a few proud gay Americans decided they wouldn't take it anymore. And they fought. And the billy clubs came out, the arrest wagons came, and that uprising, that riot, which was illegal, started a process where finally, in this country, gay people can enjoy the same rights as the rest of us in many ways. In every case, there's still a lot of work to do, but it took somebody saying enough is enough. Conspiracy. It's a secret plan to do something unlawful. And in general, I don't support conspiracy. I think collegially, as a teams, as companies and agents, there's a lot we can do together. But I'm proud to say that on August 1st of 2019, I got in the business of conspiracy. A group of agents, and I think carriers, and I know carriers in this room today because of my conversations, got fed up with the lack of connectivity, fed up with the lack of capabilities, and just decided to do something about it. And where you stand on the spectrum of fed up with things isn't as important to me today, because the fact that you're here shows at least you're not ignoring it anymore, right? Because the complaints about the channel, the complaints about agents, the complaints about carriers, that just seems like it would go on forever. And a little conspiracy behind the scenes kept you all in the loop, got us in the room today to talk about that. I would suggest that that's a good thing. And so what I would tell you is I would like you to be a little criminal today as you think through this. Because when you go back to your organizations, you're going to hear a lot of things like, that's not how we've done it. That's not on our roadmap, right? That represents a risk. It's coming from agents. It's too soon. I've got a platform I'm building. I've got a system that I'm in the middle of. This will be a disruption to the way things will happen, right? This will not necessarily fit in with the existing plan. And I say, screw it all. Screw it all, because when was the right time to get married? When was the right time to have children? When was the right time to start an agency? When was the right time to start your carriers?
What do we want to know about the independent channel as partners, as agents, and as carriers working together? Not to compete in the independent channel, but to go after the directs, to go after the captives, to go after the Lemonades of the world that say, hey, we can come in here and we can do it easier, better, faster, cheaper than you can, because you guys are too old, you can't innovate, and you don't know what you're doing anymore. And it starts with saying we need to change the conversations that we have between agents and carriers. I had 17 carriers that I represented in 12 states in my independent agency. I'd have the territory reps come in every quarter. Hey, Clint, let me show you your numbers from last month. I'm not worried about my numbers from last month. I'm worried about my numbers this month because that's what I can affect. Well, but these are the only numbers we have. Okay. But I'm worried about what actions I need to be taking to improve. And then it goes, well, why aren't you writing more business with us? Well, your rates are terrible. Well, no, we've got other agents writing business for us. What do you mean our rates are terrible? And it becomes an us versus them or us versus you in the conversation. Instead, we should be talking about not the results or the what, but the why.
I just got to take a minute and say kudos to Seth Zaremba for the hundreds of conversations that he's had over the last 4 years with his carriers, and for the pilot agents for stepping up and having the same conversations with their carriers as well. Like we thought we'd be lucky to have 4 carriers, maybe 20 people in the room, and we had 43 people from 8 carriers show up. And they weren't just sitting back listening to us do all the talking. No, they were getting involved. They were asking questions. They were offering their opinions. Honestly, I shouldn't have even called this a presentation. This was a 6-hour conversation.
A couple have already been mentioned, but one thing we talked about was the idea that, understanding better what's driving a consumer shopping behavior And is it coming from an agency action? Is it coming from a carrier action? Is it rate driven? Is it, a lot of agencies will put, if a renewal increases over 8%, we're going to shop it every time. Was that driving the consumer to switch carriers, or is there something else that's happening to it?
What's the why behind it? I think that's what we need to discover, right? Because if you guys can tell me, well, your customers are going out to other carrier websites, well, I don't really care unless they're like, what's the behavior that's driving that? Are they shopping? Are they are they actually at risk to leave? I think that those are the pieces that we really need to marry the data together.
It may or may not have come up. It's just the whole concept of personas and actually being able to assign personas. The whole people like you. I think we know a lot about that stuff today, but there's lots of opportunity to improve the depth and the segmentation.
So a carrier being able to perhaps have their own personas or preferences, being able to load in and look at those as categories by agency or state or product.
Yep.
Carriers look to develop new services and products. I think there's a big opportunity for partnering because the agents have more of that insight in the front end, that fuzzy front end. So if we're thinking about doing something and there's a way for us to partner to test appetite in a market for something that we believe might be coming based on not even necessarily who we serve right now, but who we might want to serve.
So thank you to the carriers who didn't just show up in terms of filling up a seat, but lending their expertise, sharing their perspective, and asking questions. I don't believe that technology is an end in and of itself. I think technology is going to be a vehicle to bring us closer together into a more meaningful relationship, and thereby equipping agents to do the same for their customers. That meeting on the most random day, Friday, January 24th at 9 a.m., brought us a huge step closer to making that happen. All right, this hotel is straight up bananas. All right, here we go.